Friedrich from Paint Bucket Games, and they developed Through the Darkest Times, which is an award-winning title, and we will talk about this and show about show things about the game later in this. Yes, so after my short introduction, as usually in my interviews. So please, Jörg, give us a detailed introduction of yourself, and also tell us about your first computer and your first game or most remembered game.
'80s. I got it rather late. But my first video game I played on an Atari 2600 that belonged to a friend of mine who I regularly visited to play Defender, I believe was the game. Yeah.
Defender, yes. Yes. Yeah, and tell us a bit about yourself, or about your history in the video games industry, and then about the founding of your own studio.
I started my career in 2003, rather late. I was already in my late 20s or early 30s. And the first game I worked on was Desperados 2 with Spellbound. Back then, I started there as a level designer because I have a background as a programmer, but I always felt that I wanted to be a designer. And so being a level designer on Desperados felt like exactly that the right kind of mixture. I had to script a lot and create the game there. And I stayed, or I kept working as a designer pretty much through all my career. I shipped Desperados 2, and then I left to Berlin and worked at a company called Radon Labs back then on a game on Drakensang, also as a level designer. And then I went to Jaeger. That was 2007. I joined Jaeger, who just had begun working on a big AAA project, which then later became Spec Ops: The Line. And at Jaeger, I made what you could call a career, I guess. So I began as a level designer, and then I became a game designer, and then I was lead level designer. And after Spec Ops, I became a design director for Dead Island 2. And worked there for 3 years. That was the biggest project I ever worked on. There was, like, in the end, a team of, I think, almost 150 people working on that game. And then that project didn't come to completion.
Yes,
we
know him.
Yeah. When Dead Island 2 was basically when the publisher and the developer parted ways, and Dead Island 2 wasn't developed by Jaeger anymore. I had been at Jaeger for almost 10 years, and I decided that I wanted to try something else, and went. I was thinking already about going indie back then. That was 2015, but I first stopped at a company called Sandbox in Berlin, and worked there as a creative director for a game called Albion Online for a little bit more than a year. And then that was then the time when I decided, okay, now I need to do something else, because I had been in this, like, kind of higher positions for a rather long time in rather big teams, and I wanted to I want well, what I like that. I mean, I like managing teams and I like being like in charge creatively, but I really missed making a game, like
Mm,
working on the game with my two hands, right the at the actual thing, and that's something that you don't do anymore when you are in a director position
mm,
for so many
yeah,
people. Um, so I thought I wanted to make something small and something personal, and that was the time. That was late 2016, and that was a year when that was the year when the Brexit vote had happened,
yeah,
and when Trump had become president. And those were events that were really worrying
yeah,
to me and a good friend of mine, Sebastian Schulz, who I also had worked with for a long time. He also was at Jaeger, and then he was also with me at Sandbox. And we were discussing politics and events every day, and we thought like, okay, we need to do something. And we also had made smaller games on the side, like game jam stuff
yeah,
and things
yeah,
like that. And so I thought maybe we can put our not attention, our attitude,
mm,
our what we were thinking in and our craft together, and make a game that takes a political stance towards all the events, and basically also gives out a warning, kind of
mm,
what could happen to society and to even the world if things go
yeah,
uh, so very wrong. So, and then at the same time, that was kind of in parallel, we also looked at how games treated certain topics, in particular, how they treated, well, how they treated the rise of Hitler, how they treated how they treated Nazism
mm,
and World War II, and we found that it most games, when they showed that period, then they were focusing on the war, right? They
yeah,
were most of them were war games, and you
yeah,
were either a soldier or a commander, and basically it was all from a militaristic or military perspective.
yeah,
And if you compared this to movies, then then movies have a much broader, or books have a much broader perspective
yeah,
on what happened back then. And that, so we saw a gap, and we thought like, okay, maybe we can make a game that gives a different perspective on that time, and by doing so also send a message.
yeah,
And that was then the beginning of Through the Darkest of Times, a game in which you play a resistance fighter who, yes, fights against the Nazis, but has no weapons or gun, or is
yeah,
no superhero, but basically is just a normal, regular
sure,
person. And yeah, to make this, we had to found a studio, and that's how we why we founded then Paint Bucket Games. First, it was just the two of us, and but then we got a lot of attention and kind of, yeah, success, and the studio grow, and the game continued in development, and it came out then early this year in January. We shipped it for PC and Mac, and in the summer we released the console versions of the game.
mm. So, uh, well, no, the good thing is, because in this topic, it's also about one time about censorship, also about ethics and moral. Um, that was very interesting. The fact, why did you do this game, and that answers, I think, a lot of questions about the responsibility we have right now. Not only also here in Germany, but also as a human being. I mean, there is a. I mean, it. it will be often used right now, but I think it's still important. The words that said, "Okay, I was not responsible for this. What happens 80 years ago, but I am responsible for this. That this shit happens never, never, never again."
Mhm.
And this is something important that also video games could be used for. And as you said, not just like, "Hey, I'm a soldier and I kill a lot of Nazis," but also, yeah, uh, what is as a human, just normal human being, what was the possibilities and how dangerous it was also at these times when you joined a resistance. I mean, we also know a lot of historic events, what happened to if you joined a resistance, but it's also keep the importance um, of this to tell these stories and keeping this alive and really yeah, use this for this that this never happens again. And this is something yeah, maybe you answered the one of the topics right direct, because why what is the responsibility of a developer, what can we do in this yeah, business right now. Let's go a little bit back in time, because there is something that is very important, and as a fact in German history, with censorship and banning of video games, which was also through the darkest of times, very important for a decision that was made in 2018, because yeah, video games. I mean, when it starts in the 80s, were just a side product, just for fun, and we have the organization Bundesprüfstelle für jugendgefährdende Schriften. I don't have any idea how it's in English, but it's the government that the organization that yeah can censorship. They can ban the games that they are not allowed to sold to people under 18 years, and also they don't have can't do any commercial for this. So I mean, it's very hard to find English words for Verkauf unter der Ladentheke. So you are not allowed to you can sell it, but you are not official. If someone came into your shop and asked, "Do you have Wolfenstein?" and she says, "Can you say yes, I have it? Are you 18? I can sell it to you."
I always say it's like porn. It's
Yes.
treated like hardcore
Yeah.
porn, because
Yeah.
that's kind of how it is then,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's really, and all through the years I had the feeling, okay, there is something wrong, because if you make a movie or you write a book, because in video games, and generally you are not allowed to show swastikas in video games, in movies, and in books and in comics. But there is it's called Sozialadäquanzklausel, and really for this there is no English word. That is a decision that can be made individually for if this is not supporting this fascism, then and it shows against the fascism, then you can show it, like also in movies or books or comics. But, and that was something interesting, it also is allowed for entertaining movies, like Inglourious Bastards. This is really an entertainment movie, and oh my god, Christoph Waltz playing his role so awesome that at the end of the movie you are happy that he's alive, so he survives this. So in in this movie, it's allowed to show swastika and every kind of symbols. And I said, okay, why not in games? And I don't mean that you can, like a Call of Duty, you can fight off the German side with not this, but in other games like maybe like single player. Wolfenstein is still a single player game, and you are at the side of the rebellion, fight against Nazis and fascism. But it's not allowed. You have to change a lot of this to present this in German. And then, yeah, in 2018, something really surprising happened because I had half a year before I had a talk. Was in a talk round with other from the business side, and I said I guessed around 4 to 5 years it will need, then this is allowed. And then it was this surprise message that it's now allowed, that also individually, it's an individual decision that would be made, that is allowed, that you can show swastikas in video games, but also, as I said, as an individual decision. And through the Darkest of Times, the demo version was the first game that was official release and shown. And you sent me a picture because often people say, hey, why is it so important to show it? I mean, is it really necessary? And you sent me that picture, and I think it shows really, really well why it is important. So maybe you can tell us a bit about why it was so important that this should be allowed.
So when we started working on Through the Darkest of Times, we were, of course, aware that in Germany it was not allowed to show swastikas or, as the law says, unconstitutional symbols. Unconstitutional symbols or symbols of unconstitutional organizations in games, or that it would lead to not being allowed to be sold and so on. And so we thought that we were what should we do? And our decision, well, what many games did at that time was that they created different symbols, right? That they made something up. Instead of a swastika, they showed like an iron cross or something that is somehow related to them, so people could see like, okay, what this meant. So people see like, okay, it's clearly these are Nazis, but we don't call them Nazis and we don't show any Nazi symbols, and then we're good. And that was something that we clearly did not want to do, because we wanted to make a historical game about historical Nazism taking place in Germany, and we didn't want to reinvent different symbols or names just to circumvent this ban. So what we did instead was we thought, okay, we just leave it out. We leave out the swastika. So there's this picture, and that is pretty much how the art looked like. You have a Nazi stormtrooper guy with and instead of a swastika on his arm, you have like a red and white and a white circle, and that white circle is empty.
Yeah.
And we've thought of us to be very clever, because we thought like, okay, now we're good, and we clearly also make a statement here and say like, okay, you don't want us to show this, we don't show it. It's fine. And but then we come closer to Gamescom 2018, and we wanted to show the game publicly. And if you want to show a game publicly on Gamescom, you need approval from the age rating board. And so we asked them for an approval, and they told us that the problem was not only the swastika, but the problem was, for example, also if one of our characters in the game made the Hitler salute, which of course happened a lot.
Sure.
Right, so we have a game about Nazis. They do the Hitler salute and they say it and so on because that's what they did.
Yeah.
And so we learned the hard way because we didn't inform properly that that not showing unconstitutional symbols is much more than just the swastika, and that would have really hurt us because we would have needed to rewrite all the dialogues. We would have needed to redo a lot of graphics and a lot of art. And before we thought like, okay, we just leave out the swastika and then we're good and we just ship one version. But that would have forced us to make several versions. And we were really worried because we were just two people and so really, really small studio, and we couldn't deal with that kind of work.
Yeah.
And also began to make us really annoyed because so far we just kind of accepted this ban because we thought, okay, it's Germany. There's reasons for this. Yes, books can do it differently, but it's how it is. We just deal with it. But then we realized like, okay, this is because it started to really influence our work big time because we had to think for every single scene, we had to think, okay, how can I write this while circumventing the ban? How can I have people talk about Hitler, for example, without mentioning Hitler and stuff like this? And this is like this was really bad because it really hit us in our creativity and also in the freedom to tell the story as it was. And we were clearly, I mean, obviously this was a game about people fighting Nazis, right? This was a game about anti-fascism. This was clearly not propaganda in any way. So this made no sense. And we were very lucky because at that same time, in parallel, without our doing, there were negotiations between basically the games industry lobby, you could say, like Game, which is the organization of publishers and developers in Germany, and politics. And there were talks and there were negotiations about this. And we came to Game with our problem to the organization, and they said like, stay put. Maybe you're gonna be lucky soon.
Okay.
And then basically we knew a little bit beforehand that we could get an USK rating for our game for the Gamescom demo, and therefore we made two versions. We made one version without any symbols, which got an H rating early, and we got the second version where we didn't censor anything. And hoped it would get its rating. And then 2 weeks before Gamescom, we got a call, and they said, "Yeah, you can actually you get an H rating, H12, appropriate for H12, and you can show the game as you intended." And that, of course, was wonderful.
For us. It was really. I mean, I also knew, I was also spoke to Felix about this. I didn't use that they were so far. So that was one of my questions. Did you get a hint that they say, hey, maybe just wait a little bit? And
we basically got a hint, and that was kind of like, we cannot promise anything.
Yeah.
But maybe... but maybe so stay put. So basically, so we kept a version just in case, right? Because we had to censor a version, so we got our H rating in time. But we kept a second version around without censorship, and hoped for the best. Basically, that's
and it happened. I mean, there was really a time of change. I mean, I remember when in the early 2000s it was said that the USK now has really the power to if they approve a game and give them a rating, there's no possibility that the game could be censored or banned. Only if the developers change something very, very. I think this happened one time.
Yeah.
They made a blood cheat in it, and that was not in the rated version, so that happened. But in the end, the USK and there was a loud outcry and so, oh my god, games were censored, and but at the end, many that worked at the USK are gamers. They come from the side, and you see the change. I mean, I don't know if there is any was banned a game this year. I don't think so. And there are also many games that were released earlier. I mean, Bethesda is they made with Doom when they tried to release it. They were surprised that they released it. I talked to them about this. But also with Wolfenstein, I mean, they had to change a lot, but that a Wolfenstein could be officially released in Germany was a couple of years ago a no-go. And then they changed, okay, they made the regime, but it was okay. I said it was okay. But for a game, as you said, that is really with a historical background, I really can understand that you said okay, and you see it. It makes not really sense to have this white circle there. So yeah, so that really changed, and this was really important for you and also for the rest of the video game industry, because after this they also got an age rating Wolfenstein. So because there was also that said, okay, also entertainment games can get an age rating like Wolfenstein. But as I said before, there will be never a release for a multiplayer game when you can choose sides, and that is also, I think, really good right now. But also, this is the what happens as a developer. What was your decision, your ethic decision as a developer? But I have to switch back a little bit to what I said before, Spec Ops the Line, and also Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was the no Russian level. There were very discussed decision again, because before, I didn't quite remember games that kept me so emotional in decisions. Like GTA. If you drive over people's, then the police comes and maybe you shoot them, but in the end you can't win the situation. You get arrested or you get in hospital, but at the end nothing changes in the game. You will be released, and that's it. So there is no emotional bonding. So when did you sing? Was there a change in the minds of the developers? Sometimes you said, okay, we have to make decisions in this game that really bother the gamer.
For us, when we were working on Spec Ops: The Line, that was definitely the case. There was an internal direction, kind of a design direction, that said we're trying to make the player feel bad, which was really something very new at that time, and very controversial as well. Even within the studio, there were a lot of people that said, like, what the hell, what are you what are you doing? We're making a video game. Players should feel awesome all the time and be in charge and be the heroes and be in control. And I don't want to. Who wants to play a video game if it makes you feel bad, right? And so that was something that definitely was intentional in Spec Ops: The Line, and it was also, and it's for certain, it's something that influenced my thinking about games and about game design in general, and I think widened the perspective on what games can do and what kind of emotions they can create. Because up to that point, I also was always convinced, like, yes, games are there to make you happy and feel good and feel awesome and feel strong and feel superior and so on. Which, of course, if you look at games, isn't entirely true. There have always been games that made you like that scared people, like horror games, or made you feel weak or whatever. So that this was always the case. But we for some reason we stayed away from certain emotions, and I think that Spec Ops is one of the games, probably not, or it's certainly not the only one, but it's one of the games that that explored new emotions that games can create, and that are unique to games, right? That a movie could never do. For example, a game can make you feel proud on yourself because you did something really good, and it's like, yes, I did this. This is an emotion a movie cannot create because you didn't do what what happened in the movie. But on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, there is something like guilt, right? I can feel guilty or even ashamed or embarrassed because of something I did in a game, and that's very strong. That's a very strong emotion, and it's it creates possibilities for very interesting narratives, and it's something that is outside of the spectrum of any passive media. Only games can really create a feeling of guilt or a feeling of embarrassment in players. And so this was something to explore, and it was very challenging. I have to say, it took a long time, and there were times. I mean, Spec Ops was in development for 5 years, and there were definitely times in between where we thought maybe we're doing everything wrong. Maybe this is a big mistake, and it will never go anywhere, because it was, which I guess is always the case if you try something new. Then you can't be certain that it works in the end. And so and that kind of leads then later to, I mean, there were other games in between, but there's definitely clearly a connection between making Spec Ops: The Line as an anti-war game. That's the way it's kind of sometimes read, or as a game that shows how horrible war can be, to a game that shows how horrible Nazism can be, even outside of the war. And there's also there's also something that I learned now, and that I found interesting, is because Spec Ops was still a shooter, and I'm sorry, I have to stop my son just a
Hallo.
second. Hallo, was machst du denn hier?
Hello. It was very funny. You heard them before we were recording. You heard in the background, and say, "Oh, he plays car right now."
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
So something that I'm currently looking into is what, and that we looked already into with Through the Darkest of Times, is having players in positions where they are not clearly positions of power, right? Most games put you in positions of power. You're either you have a gun, or you're super strong, or you have like super skills, and you're the hero, and the entire world waits for you as the hero to change it, which is cool, but always reproduces certain kinds of narratives. And so the Darkest of Times already was the first step in putting you into a position of powerlessness, where you cannot change things in a big scale. But you can still make interesting, significant decisions on a small scale. And that's something that have also, again, books and movies have been doing this for ages. But I've got the feeling that it's rather new to games to go into this kind of spaces. And I think there's still a lot to explore for games.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I mean, as you said, that was rather something new to make this decision, or to feel bad in a video game, and that's also, I think, in some bigger movie franchise also there is a change right now, because you have like Star Wars, you have the rebellion, white, you have the dark side. But did you watch Rogue One?
Yes.
And the first thing what he does from the rebellion, he kills an informant, because he was hurt at the knee, and he knew, okay, if he get caught by the Imperium, they will get every information, so he has to kill him. And he said, okay, wow, that was the first time in Star Wars history that anyone from the rebellion killed an innocent. He has no weapons. He just killed him and said, okay, wow, this is really wow. So this is one of the, for me, it's one of the best, or is right now the best Star Wars movie, because he breaks with so many things right now. And that remembers me a little bit from to Spec Ops the Line, and also other games that followed with this decision, also with feeling you bad, because when you start playing, hey, it's a shooter, and then you, okay, what I'm doing here right now. So we see in the industry there is a change, and usually I love to play games that makes me feel happy, because I can relax, and but like I see that there is, and this is a power we have in this industry right now, because games are going bigger, they're getting well received, more people play games, and then we can use it as a tool to say, hey, you won't listen to this in school, but here's a game that shows you what happened there, and in what position you were. You in this time you were not the BJ Blazkowicz with the heavy gun and could shoot them. That was your position in this time, and this is, I think, very important, and shows a very big responsibility. And on the personal side, I'm very thankfully for you developing such an important game, such an important title. And I was very happy that, as it was announced with the Sozialadäquanzklausel, that this was really good for you, so you don't have to change it. Yeah. So yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I think that was our talk with this, because we talk a lot about the responsibility, and also bit information about the censorship here in Germany, and how it changed for us in the last couple of years. And I think if you want to play through the Darkest of Times, as I said before, you get it on Steam. You get it on consoles right now.
But it, also on mobile.
On
So you
mobile.
so you can play it on PC, Mac, iOS, Android, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Switch.
And Switch, yeah. Okay. So yeah. So please have a look. I think really it's really important. So thank you, Jörg, again for this for your time, and hope we see maybe meet us in person, and maybe next year on an event or 2022, hopefully. And and we see us tonight at 9 p.m. Central European Time. I have here Tommy Tallarico and Hans Ippisch, and we talk about the Intellivision Amico, or the fight David versus Goliath. So thank you and goodbye.